Well, welcome everyone. It's a crisp but beautiful day in March. Hopefully this is starting a formal transition towards spring. I know I'm ready for that. We're here today for the Switch to Six training series through Virginia Main Street about inclusive leadership and organizational capacity. We'll go from 11 a.m. till 12:15 p.m. today on March 16th. So as you've probably recognized, we have moved to Microsoft Teams from Google. It's a transition, as I said earlier. I know we're feeling it around here. So, but a lot of the tools are the same. So during the webinar, please mute yourself. This webinar is being recorded, so know that we will post this on virginiamainstreet.com in the training resources once we're complete, along with the slide deck. So all that will be available. And for any of the questions, any point for Q&A, you can use the chat feature. So that's that one all the way to the left on the top of your screen this time. All the way to the left, you can see the list of attendees through that little people icon. If you have a question, if we get to a point where we've got the breadth and the time to make room for some asking some questions in real time versus on chat, you can use that raise hand feature. We'll really have to see how the pacing goes, but we'll let you know if that's possible. And then React is just fun, you know, around your picture, you can put a thumbs up, or if you thought something was funny, do that cute little icon, or if you love any of the Virginia Main Street staff, put a little heart there, okay? Then you can change your galleries, you can change your settings. We all like to look good, so you can change your filter, your background. Now, so some of the important ones, you turn your camera off and on with that little camera icon. You got the microphone on and off, a little icon there too, pretty simple. And then the big red leave button, don't hit that. Wait till the very, very end. I'm going to say this now. So there's a Mobilizing Main Street cohort meeting after this. So if you're a Mobilizing Main Street community and you know who you are, if you're not sure, then you're probably not, then just know that you're going to stick around after this using the same link. So I want to introduce some of the staff. We've got our Virginia Main Street team here. Courtney Maley is our program manager. I see her there in her cable knit sweater. And we've got Blair Burglar. She's focused on grants and Northern Virginia. We have Nicole Childress. She works with our publications. She's in Southwest. And Ellie Dudding McFadden. She is in, I don't even have anything there for her, but she is the northern part of the Shenandoah Valley. And then Zachary Whitlow is Southern Virginia. And I'm Kyle Meyer. I work with the eastern part of Virginia, all the way to the eastern shore. So Virginia Main Street is a program of the Department of Housing Community Development, and we're committed to creating safe, affordable, and prosperous communities to live, work, and do business in Virginia. But as Virginia Main Street program, we are a coordinating program of Main Street America, and we hope to lead a powerful grassroots network consisting of over 40 coordinating programs in over 1,200 neighborhoods and communities across the country, committed to creating high-quality places and building a stronger communities through preservation-based economic development. And we've been around for over
Kyle, I think you hit mute. We can't hear you anymore.
Okay, that was spontaneous. Don't know why that happened. My hands aren't even near here, but thank you for pointing that out, Dion. So we're in the midst, second webinar of our Switch to Six training series. And Main Street America has the evaluation framework that helps communities to have, that baseline and understand that baseline, what they're aiming for of best practices. Now, our advancing Main Street communities, the designating communities, have to meet these standards. But any other community, highly recommend taking a look at these because it gives you some step-by-step understanding what you are aiming for an effective program, a program that will impact your community effectively. So that is a hyperlink at the bottom that's underlined, and you can take a look at this community assessment tool. But there are 6 of these accreditation standards. Broad-based community commitment to revitalization. We had a webinar back in January that addressed this. Today we're talking about inclusive leadership and organizational capacity. In May, we have an in-person regional Rev Up. We do 3 of them around Virginia that will focus on diverse funding and sustainable program operations. In July, we'll go back to a webinar that will talk about strategy-driven programming. In September, we have a regional Rev Up yet again to talk about preservation-based economic development. And then we'll end with a webinar in December on demonstrated impact and results. And this is what that schedule looks like. So the webinars, or excuse me, the Rev Ups for the fall in September, we have yet to nail down those locations. So look out for more information soon, but the hyperlinks below will take you to our event calendar as well as registration links. The Rev Up for diverse funding and sustainable program operations will open up on the 24th of March. So stay tuned. So today, we're focusing on inclusive leadership and organizational capacity. And this means that strong, thriving communities, they don't just happen. They need effective leaders at all levels, from a broad base of committed volunteers to dedicated professional staff offering their time, talents, and passion for this work. And there are 4 key focus areas: inclusive organizational culture and diverse volunteer engagement, active board leadership and supporting volunteer base, professional staff management, and effective operational structure. Dion Bowe is here today. She is the Vice President of Urban Development at Main Street America. So she's going to be taking that deep dive and helping to walk you through. But as Vice President of Urban Development, Dion plays a key leadership role to expand technical services offerings to neighborhood commercial districts, lead the retention and growth of Urban Maine and Main Street America city coordinated programs. Dion works to build economically vibrant neighborhood commercial districts and community leaders through Main Street America's Urban Maine Main Street approach. So she has over 2 decades of experience in project coordination in the fields of urban economic development and commercial district revitalization. She serves as senior program officer for before coming to Main Street America, she served as a senior program officer for LISC, or Local Initiatives Support Corporation in Chicago. She also holds a master's degree in public administration from Roosevelt University and a bachelor's degree in communications from the University of Illinois at Chicago. And so locally, Dion serves in an advisory board capacity to several entities in Chicago, such as the Community Law Project and Equidicity. So I'm gonna leave it there. I just hit some of those key points in your bio, but welcome, Dion. And at this point, I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna hand the mic over to you. You good?
Awesome. Awesome. I got it. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle, so much for that introduction. I really hate introductions because it lets you know how long you've been doing this work and how old you are often. But I really appreciate that. Just one correction I'd like to make. The programming of Urban Maine, that term is going away, guys. So you will just hear us call this Main Street's Big City Programming. So it's really we want to ensure that there is not any separation or distinction from all of our programming, because our neighborhood commercial districts, as well as our downtowns and suburban districts, are utilizing the 4-point approach. We just have to sometimes change our methodology depending on where we're working. So thank you for that overview. I've been with Main Street America for about 7 years now. I can't believe the time has flown so quickly, but it has been a great time working here. I am not going to cover a lot of these like primer slides in great detail because you guys know about the 4-point approach, what we're known for and why we were established some 40 plus years ago. Design, organization, promotion, and economic vitality is the work of Main Street. And we really feel that is important because it is a comprehensive approach to bring all of these elements into our work as we are revitalizing the district. These are just a couple of key points to hit on when we're thinking about organization. Is about partnership building, both public and private, really, public, communicating all of your great work. So working with the public relations campaign, communicating everything, fundraising, the piece that a lot of people don't like actually is a piece of my work that I quite enjoy, actually fundraising and bringing dollars to support the programs that we love and support. Volunteer development and recognition. Promotion again is about those image campaigns. What are you saying about your downtown? What are some of those destination businesses? Promoting those businesses as well as special events and festivals. Design. We are a preservation-based economic development collective impact model. So that is very important to us, preserving historic preservation, but not only through buildings, also through the culture, right? If buildings are no longer there, making sure that the public spaces are accessible for all, as well as beautification, that clean, green, and safe. And then economic vitality is really ensuring that our businesses have the support that they need, making certain that we're bringing the correct types of businesses to our districts, but also leaning into entrepreneurial development to support those businesses that are just getting started. Small scale manufacturing and seeing that in a different way in our district, as well as understanding the market. So our guiding principles, they remain the same and those do not change. We're comprehensive. We recognize that this work is incremental. So depending on your place in Main Street, I've always joked to people that the overnight success generally takes 15 to 20 years to get there. It's an incremental process and it takes time. It's community driven. Again, it's just reiterating some of the things that I just highlighted earlier. Public-private partnerships are so important. Capitalizing on your existing assets. Again, those are your buildings, but those are the people, the events, your partners in the community. It's about quality change and it's implementation oriented. So where we started, and my colleague Amanda Elliott may have covered this, but we had accreditation criteria for about 3 decades, and they were 10 criteria that we were grading our communities on. And those are the criteria that you see here. Well, we've switched, and the history and the reasoning behind the new standards to switching to 6, and I'm going to click through this really quickly, is that after rolling out the refresh review of the Main Street approach that happened maybe about 8 to 10 years ago. I know it was occurring as I was coming on board and starting up at Main Street, but it was really to ensure that Main Street programs were being positioned as those economic development organizations and that you were seen as those first stop shops to either your city government, to businesses, and to developers that were moving into the community. We wanted to move programs beyond idea and project driven to strategy driven programming. You guys may have heard transformation strategies, catalyst strategies, corridor strategies, but that was our point, to really move you to ensuring that you are moving in a strategy driven approach. More community-wide engagement. We began to, realize after, 30 or so years of our existence that the same 10 people kept showing up to the meetings and hanging out with each other, right? So we wanted to ensure that there was more engagement, that there was input and participation in programming and organization. And then there was just this need to develop a more cohesive system within the network, that we all were speaking the same language, that we were all applying the same approach the same way, no matter what coordinating program that we visit or that we're providing services to, that we wanted to see that cohesion across the network. I'm going to click through these transitions really quick. So again, this is just a way to reiterate. Community and local Main Street program, that is where many of you sit. The coordinating program that we're working with today is Virginia Main Street. As Kyle mentioned, there are over 40 of those across the state. state, city, and county-led coordinating programs that support you. So you're very lucky to be able to count on Virginia Main Street as your partner. And then Main Street America. We developed this 4-point approach, but we know that we can't do this by ourselves. This is a approach that we need to do with our coordinating programs and with you, the local Main Street. So this is just another way of talking about and showcasing what Kyle just highlighted when he started his slide. The new accreditation framework, it meets communities where they are, to really help you guide your revitalization efforts. It really offers, I would say, a holistic set of Main Street America community accreditation standards. This is a collective impact approach. And we really want to make certain that all of the points are always connecting and they're not siloed. It provides a model for collaboration, for local revitalization. It is helping build the capacity of the local practitioner stakeholders on the ground to understand economic development. This is not a field that's you can often go to school for. As Kyle mentioned, I started my career in communications, thought I would work at NPR to do news reporting. That was something that I always wanted to do. And then I fell into economic development and decided that I would learn how to administer policy really well. My career started in government, and I understood how to read policy, how to administer policy, but there was not a track for me to go into economic development. And there is often not a track for many of you. You may have fell into this work, you were their business owner, you really cared about your downtown. So we are hoping that the Main Street Community Accreditation Framework and the process itself is this capacity building tool that is teaching individuals how to do this work on the ground. And then finally, our accreditation framework is to elevate the value of the recognition of a nationally accredited community or commercial district. When we all see those fantastic communities that go on the stage to win their Great American Main Street Award, those awards can be utilized as a way to bring more resources, more funding to your community from either outside foundations, get the public relations that you need. So it is really highlighting and elevating you and your status as being those exemplary Main Streets that have figured out this process. Why is this important? A couple of things, right? Or a few things here. It recognizes that the program operates with the highest standards. Requirements help programs with fundraising. So as I just said before, if you're a Great American Main Street Award winner or you're this nationally accredited program, your funders understand that you have been able to amplify what excellence means by utilizing this program. It helps with volunteer development. It helps with program credibility as well as overall sustainability of that program. And it challenges your board to organize and grow. It also illustrates, as I just said, credibility to your partners, community, and your volunteers that you have put in the work and you have become a nationally accredited program. And there's the ongoing track record of performance. Again, we can all do this work. We can talk about how great it is, but if we're not tracking our process and our progress, people don't know what we've done. And people often sometimes forget about the great work we've done. I believe Amanda may have highlighted this, so I won't spend a lot of time here, but this is the community self-assessment tool. We want to ensure that you are self-assessing yourself before we come out to do the accreditation. Within each standard in the new self-assessment tool, you will be able to score yourself utilizing the indicators that are listed below. 1, not being addressed. 2, minimal work but needs more effort. 3, evidence of satisfactory progress, et cetera, et cetera. I won't read them all, but I do hope you find that these self-assessments help you be able to look at some of the areas that you need to work on, but also be able to celebrate your successes and make certain that you are highlighting those things. Communities will need to average at least 3 points per standard to achieve accreditation. And to Kyle's point earlier, if you are just starting this process, I think it is very important for you to know what are you striving to do, and what are some of the items that you need to work on. As we go through the slide deck today, I will highlight a lot of newer communities that I've been working with. So as Kyle mentioned, my work is really working with creating more citywide coordinating programs, so working with city governments, establishing those programs. So a lot of the communities that I've started to work with, although they've been working with us maybe for 3 to 4 years, some of them are still very new in their process. So I will highlight some of the great things that they're doing, but none of them at this point have received accreditation. Amanda highlighted this, really the point number one, broad-based community commitment to revitalization. And those key areas of focus were partnership and collaboration, community outreach, as well as communications and public relations. These are just a couple of examples of what some other communities and some communities within Virginia have been doing to really ensure that they are communicating and collaborating with partners. But for today, why I'm here, inclusive leadership and organizational capacity. It is really about building a strong, thriving communities just don't happen, right? They need effective leaders at all levels, from broad base of committed volunteers to dedicated professional staff offering their time, talent, and passion for this work. This standard places a strong value on people as Main Street's greatest resource and should reflect our network's core value that Main Streets are for everyone, right? The standard places an important priority on ensuring that Main Street organizational structure offers an inclusive environment for community engagement as well as effective leadership development. So what you will begin to notice is that what you heard from point number one may lead into point number two. So if you're doing that outreach and partnership development, you're going to make certain that you have that inclusive leadership and organizational capacity that's needed to get the work done. This is just a sample of some of the metrics that we're looking at for inclusive organizational culture and diverse volunteer engagement. You guys can read over this. Again, you will have a copy of the slide deck, so I won't spend a lot of time here, but I do want to just highlight, number one, how is volunteer engagement? Are there challenges to volunteer engagement? And how is broad engagement? Do they each participate on a committee? So those are just some of the things that you need to think about as you are building your organizational culture and your diverse volunteer engagement process. Main Street, greatest resource are its people. So there are several pictures here that you see. A couple of these pictures are from our Boston Main Street program, and one of these pictures happened to be me on it's me participating, I think, in a conference. But it's always thinking about all of the different individuals that should be participating. You need those professionals. You need your children to be a part of this work. You need your residents that are willing to be your supporters and the advocates. You need those board members. All of them are so vitally important to making certain that you have the inclusive leadership and organizational capacity that you need. When you think about the people, it's always good to understand your demographics, right? So this is a really quick poll that we, pulled from, utilize the census data. You can Google census, you can put your zip code in or your city, and it generally will give you an estimate of your population. This is Chillicothe City, Missouri, in Missouri that was pulled. But you can do this. I mean, it's really simple. Go to census.org or just Google census.org to be able to pull out what is your population estimates for 2021, right? How many people live in your community? And then you can also start distinguishing, how many individuals are there versus, female, male. Look at your race, and ethnicity to ensure that you are including all of the individuals in your community. Age is so important. You know, if you have a high group of young people in your community that are not being engaged, you really need to have a really clear understanding when you're going in to this work of who you need to be reaching out to and who's not showing up to your meetings, and try to develop a program or some type of effort to make certain that either your events, your programming is something that is beneficial to everyone in your community. We're going to talk about a case study, and this is from Charlotte, North Carolina. This is the Beatties-LaSalle Ford Corridor. I started work there. This is like one of my very first communities that I started work with as I started at Main Street. So I've been working with them it's almost 5.5 years, 5.5 years. This is a relationship with it started out as a relationship with the city of Charlotte and the Knight Foundation. And there was one particular corridor that they wanted to work on in historic West End. It was the Beatties-LaSalle Ford Corridor. This corridor is a primarily African-American corridor that is going through, Charlotte itself is going through massive growth, but several of its minority majority corridors are now starting to see a level of gentrification. And it was really starting to change the cultural fabric of these districts. And the city of Charlotte, as well as the Knight Foundation, wanted to test out how could Main Street really be a tool that we could utilize along this corridor to, one, start really engaging with the community to hear their concerns. And I'll take you through a couple of things that we did, but also begin teaching the local community how to create community wealth building opportunities. So we worked with the Incremental Development Alliance, and we can talk a little bit more about that and how they could actually start developing the corridor that they live in and love, right? And so this case study, I think, is very important to highlight in the next case study too, are these communities that did not know much about Main Street. One, did not see themselves as a Main Street community just based on how their corridor, how their corridor looked. This corridor has a couple of strip malls, it had some gaps along the corridor, that there weren't those contiguous historic buildings. But what they did have was a really committed, one, organization on the ground and a committed community that wanted to save their corridor as well as their neighborhood. So what did we do? This was really an inclusive process to ensure that the community was not only involved in this work, but owned this process, right? So how I started my work, this is funny because I always laugh at this. My very first meeting with the city of Charlotte, we were coming out with data. We had all of this Esri data that we pulled, and I was coming out with transformation strategies. And I was like, yeah, they're going to love this because this is all about the things that I heard from their survey, but I had not met the community quite yet, had not developed the relationship with the community. And so I thought, yeah, the transformation strategies are going to work. We've started with this. This is great. The community went just, I don't want to use improper language here, so I'll just say the community got really, really upset at the community meeting. They were upset at me as they felt that I was coming in to completely gentrify their neighborhood. They were upset with the city because they didn't know what this process was. So we had to take 5 steps back. One, to introduce them to the Main Street approach, but one, start with some consensus building workshops to make certain that we were all on the same page. And what that meant was for me just to facilitate a conversation with the community, begin to understand what they wanted to see in a community, and utilize the data. So educate them by utilizing the market data so they could know what are the incomes in the community, what does the demographic in the community look like, how are people shopping in the community. So along with that process, it wasn't me just now feeding them, this is what the market is telling us we should do, and this is the direction we should go in. It was utilizing that market data, but also beginning to hear from the community, to hear what they wanted, right? And dedicate time, not just one visit, by saying, yeah, we heard from you in the survey and that's it, we're going to move forward. We needed to hear from individuals that we had not heard from, people that may have had, barriers to filling out a community survey. I needed to be on the ground to build relationships with the community, build that trust. The city also needed to build the trust because this was a program that was being led by the city of Charlotte. So there was a level of distrust from the city of Charlotte, from the residents that, hey, they're just going to make this nice and this will not be a place for me. That didn't happen. We also did some asset mapping with the community. So first we started a consensus building to understand that we were all on the same page and what they wanted to do. Then we started to do asset mapping to start identifying what are the assets in the community. That could be the businesses, that could be the buildings, that could be the people that live in the community. And this example, I think, is such a fantastic example here, is that this is a mural that was a community-led process by Historic West End Partnership to really get the community out to complete this mural for themselves, not someone else coming in to do it. They did it. And this was a piece of them owning this process and being able to be a part of the process. I talked about the asset mapping, and this is just an example of what the asset mapping process that we worked them through. So Main Street America utilizes the whole assets process when we do asset mapping. And it really mirrors the 4-point approach very well, if you see that. So if you see organization, it goes to service. Organization is about building leadership, right? And strong organizational capacity. Service is about those anchors. Who are your partners? Healthcare, education, social service, city government, etc. So what we did is we worked with the local community group and all of the partners that came out. Each one of these meetings, I would say the attendance, and I've been working with them for about 4 years, there is always at least 50 people in attendance at these meetings, from business owners to residents to, foundations. There's a list Charlotte there from the city. It is a very, I would say, holistic process where many individuals are able to come in and share their, I would say, their knowledge about the community and really feel like they've been a part of the process. So a part of the asset building, and you see, I just continue to use the 4-point approach to continue to reiterating what we're talking about here, but they were able to start identifying what are the assets in their community, from community diversity to their post office. That was an organization. From promotion to their active residents, the barbecue battle that they host, the heritage, the churches and synagogues that are located there. From design, their grocery store, the businesses are reclaiming vacant spaces, Historic West End Green District, the Clean Air, North Carolina. From public art, architecture, into economic vitality, they recognize that they have small businesses, new and legacy-owned businesses, a grocery store. A lot of Black and brown communities sometimes don't have a grocery store, so they identified that as an asset, a large retail building. So as you can see, we continue to make certain that we were highlighting the things in their brilliance through this process to ensure that they owned a process and they saw themselves as a part of this process. And it wasn't Dion just coming in and tell them exactly what to do. We were building capacity for them to understand a Main Street approach, but at the same time, they were teaching us about what was important in their community. They also started with an advisory committee structure. Right? So again, we're always pushing the committees. I'm sure you've heard Kyle say, you need to get those committees started. How are you getting the committee started? Well, they wanted to start first with an advisory committee. They wanted that advisory committee to really understand the process, right? Before we started to really do committee work, who were the advisory committee members that were going to come to the table? And as you see, there's we talked about, public-private partnerships here. You had the City of Charlotte, you had the Knight Foundation, University Park Neighborhood. Those are some of their neighborhood associations. You had, again, in the City of Charlotte really crossed across all of these, all of the points, because Their city departments can also come in and support this work. So when we think about the city of Charlotte with promotion, they have a communications arm that was really helping promote a lot of the work that was going on in the, in the local community. The Historic Landmarks Commission, the organization that was, and an organization that was responsible for leading, at the time, urban Maine work. We had not yet identified the Historic West End as our organization that would lead Main Street programming 4 years ago. So this was something that they, as a team, were developing together. Who would be the best organization on the ground that has the committed relationships, the trusted relationships with not only the businesses as well as the residents. So we did not make any assumptions going in who would be that identified organization. So they started with this advisory committee. Design, here we go again. You have Historic Landmarks, Neighboring Concepts was an architectural firm that provided some pro bono assistance and support. Economic Vitality, again, City of Charlotte, Carolina Small Business Development Fund. Historic West End Partnership, who ultimately became the Main Street organization. But this was some of the, we were highlighting them as a part of the advisory committee structure to lead each one of these points based on either their credibility, their resources that they could bring to the program, as well as, again, and I feel like I'm repeating myself, the trusted relationships that they had. So I'm going to pause there for a moment to just take a few questions. If anyone has questions, please come off mute or put your questions in chat. I really can't see them. So I'm just going to be honest. I can't see them if you put them in chat. But if you just come off mute and ask a question, I'll try to answer them for you as best as I can.
Yeah, you can, if we have time, maybe start with chat and throw your question into there. If you've got a burning question and you're comfortable asking in front of everybody, we can do that quickly. Just use the raise hand feature. There's a lot of you just chomping at the bit to ask a question. We might have to wait till the next pause, the next opportunity. But let's see, any questions yet? Oh, we've got a raised hand. Let's see. All right, so this is my first time. Let's see if I can find that person. All right, so Kara Spivey. You're at the top of the list there. Oh boy, and it numbers them. That's even better.
Oh, that's cool.
Thank you. With what you just spoke about, the thing that stuck out with me the most is the community completing the projects on their own.
Yes.
And in the community where I live, that's something that we struggle with. So my question is, did you have to kind of empower the community to do things on their own, or did the community naturally want to participate?
Yeah, so Kara, that's a fantastic question. I remember the beginning of my story. I came out to this community public meeting and I'm like, yeah, I got the transformation strategies and I have the answer. And the community was like, no, 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 you don't have the answer. So they were a committed community, right? They were attending public meetings in the evenings because all of our public meetings were often hosted in the evenings. We would pack a room with individuals. So they were very interested in understanding what happened, what was going on, what were the changes that were going to start to occur. But to your question, were they motivated to come out and work together? No. There was a lot of distrust. There was a lot of distrust from toward Main Street America. There was distrust toward the city. There was also distrust to the local organization that had been doing some work on the ground, because they were essentially kind of hanging out with each other. They weren't opening up the doors to ensure that, this was made available for everyone. So after a couple of years, so that mural project didn't happen the first year after, I did some work, or even the second year for that matter. It took about 3 years for them to continue to keep coming to meetings, right? Learning more about the process, understanding, wait, you are really trying to do something to build my capacity and ensure that I can do things in my community for myself. You're for real about this. Then they started to come out. So we had to continue to reinforce that message several times. We had to go to different locations to meet people where they were, right? We were sometimes at a school, sometimes we were at the public library. We were in, there's a Food Lion that generally has a lot of people from the community are either walking or driving there. We would go there. So we met them where they were to continue to keep talking about that. We want to hear from you. We want to get your input. We want to get you involved in committees. And we just remain steadfast. We continue to keep talking about how they could get involved and made it an easy process for them to get involved.
Thank you. Hey, Dion, just being mindful of time, let's go on to the next section. And Maggie, I see your hands raised, and we'll catch you on the next opportunity. Thank you so much for your patience.
No problem. And I'm sorry, guys, if you see a little one that's popping up in my screen. My grandson is homesick, and I think he wants a little bit of my attention, but I'm going to try to. Okay, honey. All right. I'm going to come check you out in 1 second. Okay. All right. Can you go take a look at your show before I come back?
What doing?
Yes, honey. Okay. I'm sorry. Sorry for that bit of interruption. That's what happens when we're working from home, right? All right, guys. So active board leadership and supporting volunteer base. I think this is really important because this is an example of Tinleytown Main Street's, their board application. They have this on their website that if you are interested in board service with Tinleytown Main Street, you can submit an application to let them know why you want to participate. We feel that it is very important that the board of directors, the executive directors, and the committees are working as a team. They're working together as a team, right? But as you are recruiting those board members, you want to make sure that they're the right board members for your Main Street. They have diverse backgrounds, they have the experiences that you need, but they are willing to work. This is a working board. This is not a board that you are building your resume. As Kyle mentioned earlier, I'm on several boards in Chicago. He just named 2, Equiticity and the Chicago Law Project. I also on the board of Chicago Cares. Any board that I participate in, I know I need to roll my sleeves up and work, right? So these are working boards, and you have to fill out an application so I can understand why you want to be a part of this board. What are the skills that you will bring to this board? So that's very helpful for you when you're trying to determine, okay, what type of board members do I need? Do I need someone with a law background? That's great. Do I need someone with real estate background? Because I really want to get involved with development. That's fantastic. And so that also helps you begin to understand what's your pool of candidates that are applying, what is their background, and it also gives them, those board members that are applying, a clear sense of what their roles and responsibilities will be as a board member. It is very clear that you set it is very important, that you are clear about your expectations, the time commitment, and what you need from a board member so they know how to best support you. But at the end of the day, you all are acting as a team, right? I'm going to give you an example. Now, this next example is our Chicago Main Street corridors. Again, this is a new process. We've been working as a part of the City of Chicago's Invest Southwest program now for about 3 years. There are a total of 14 corridors that we're working with in the City of Chicago. I, at one point, was the manager of that program until I was able to hire someone. Frankie Payne is the young lady that's talking to someone here that you see. I just hired her last year. But we were managing these 12 commercial corridors for individuals who weren't quite sure, again, about Main Street. Right? They didn't know much about this process, but they were doing a lot of Main Street-like activities already. They were gathering people, bringing them together, meeting them where they were. If you can see, there's a beautiful mural to the left side of your screen. It's the left side of my screen, actually left and right side of the screen. And they just were hosting an event to bring people out. Again, this is trying to better understand what would people like to see in the community? How can you get them together? How can you get them to just start talking to each other when they're not normally doing that, right? We also did a ride series, which I think was really cool. So we launched that ride series last year with 5 of these corridors. We plan to do another ride series this year with all 12, but it was a way for people to come out, learn more about the community itself. So this particular community is the South Chicago community on Chicago's South Side. This was a way to really bring out community members. One, they layered this event on to like it's like a mural festival that occurs in Chicago, and you had painters that were painting murals at the same time while they were riding their bikes. There was a vendor, there was a festival that was going on at the same time. So folks that were coming into the community, either from the community or outside of the community, one, were able to experience several of the entrepreneurs that were there. Also look at the beautiful mural work that was occurring at the same time, right? And at this particular event, each one of the events, there was a sign-up form. Do you want to get involved with committees? Do you want to learn more about the program that we're leading? So this was a way for them to, one, start recruiting volunteers, but as well as recruiting board members that may be interested in getting involved a little bit more with the organization. This is another one that we hosted. This was a really cool one. This was in Chicago's Chatham neighborhood. Really, really cool. And what I will say about this one is that this particular community has fantastic architecture, right? That people often don't know about, from residential to corridor architecture. So this was an opportunity in a way. We had a band that was actually in front of us on a car, like in a truck. So the folks on the top right-hand side of the screen were actually playing music for us as we were riding our bikes, So again, these are really interesting ways to get people involved. The blue bikes at the bottom are called our Divvy bikes. So we were able to build a relationship with Divvy, it's an outside organization, but it's managed through our Chicago Department of Transportation. So we built that relationship with CDOT, got some divvies out there for people that may not have owned a bike, right? So there weren't any barriers for them to be able to participate. This year, what we're really trying to do is, because everyone doesn't ride a bike, right? So since everyone doesn't ride a bike, we're going to do walking tours, and we're also going to do some bike rides. But again, this was a way that we were able to recruit individuals to participate in our committees, to really get more involved, to understand some of the work we were doing, but in a fun way. It wasn't a lecture. We weren't lecturing people about the Main Street approach. We were showing them the Main Street approach. We were showing them the destination businesses. We were showing them a promotional activity in action, and they wanted to get involved. So it was a really great opportunity. Again, fun, family friendly, really made available for all types of individuals. The ride was not a fast ride. In fact, I invited my husband to this ride, and he happens to be a major outdoorsman. And he was just like, okay, look, Dion, you guys are riding like 3 miles per hour. Everyone keeps calling out potholes. I was like, honey, this is supposed to be like for all age groups, right? We're not here doing a critical mass rides. We also have those rides where you're going really strong. Those are some things that he and I may do because we like to ride our bikes. This was something that was low barrier for everyone to get involved, but it was also an opportunity to showcase our work, showcase what we were doing, and really get more people involved. Gonna take a moment and pause for another question, Kyle, here, if folks have questions about active board leadership and recruitment.
Yeah, I think this is a good topic to pause on. It's about 10 till 12, so we go till 12:15. So we just want to be mindful. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So are there any questions at this point? So you can enter them in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand. While we're waiting, there was a question. Oh, here we go. Cool. Maggie. So Maggie, go for it. Thank you for coming back around.
Hi. So one question that my board has sort of wondered about is, as we're looking at, so I run a program in a small town. I live here, I work here. So our goal is making sure that all our neighborhoods are included and that we're reaching out to all of our residential population to be part of the base of the organization so that ultimately our goal setting and our programming reflects that. One of the things that my board sort of debated and trying to do the self-assessment was, should they be ranking our efforts at diversity against the business population or against the residential population in our town? And so I just kind of put that out as far as, Dion, would you talk a little bit about quantitative measures and how we should be looking at, how are we doing?
Great question. Great question, Maggie. So I will say here, like quantitative measures are always, I think, tough, right? When you're first starting this. But I've always, and this could be, I was not a Main Streeter before I started at Main Street, right? I'd worked for LISC, I'd worked for the city of Chicago, and I also have a community organizing background. And so, although Main Street is supporting those small businesses and ensuring that they have a strong ecosystem environment to work for, the residents are the end users of the businesses that are there, right? And they're also the patrons of often your festivals. They're, the patrons of those businesses. So they need to be involved with the process. I think you need to have a really good balance, and you and your board needs to think about what is the balance of business owners and residents that you want to have on your board. So I'll just go back here to the culture of power. Miss Frankie Payne used to be who's now the director of Chicago Main Street, was the executive director of the Southeast Chicago Commission. So I would tell you to think about our neighborhood commercial districts like your downtown, even though they're close to each other, right? They're still a neighborhood that has a commercial corridor where residents are coming to. So Frankie lives in the community that she was the executive director of. She continues to serve, leading like an arts gallery. So she's always bringing in residents because their opinions are very important for the types of businesses that should be recruited to the district. But she's also bringing in the businesses so she can understand what type of incentives they need, what type of support do they need from her. So I think it's a delicate balance. But you all need to determine, do you want half residents? Do you want half businesses? Or do you want a quarter residents, a quarter businesses, city government, a foundation? You have to start determining what you're trying to do and who you are trying to reach as a part of your board to meet your efforts at the end of the day. Did that answer your question, Maggie?
Yes, but I was trying to basically say, like, if we're looking at sort of an equity measure, like if we're looking at a number outside of our organization that we can sort of use as a standard that we're moving towards, what kind of indicators would you be looking for?
I would tell you to look, we're going to look at your demographics. So we're going to look at your demographics to see if your board represents your demographics. So if, for example, if you're 40% white, 20% Black, 20% Hispanic, your board should look like that. Your board should represent that. So start looking at your demographics to ensure that your board represents just that number. That would be a really good measure to work from. And that will help us see that you're really starting to extend and be inclusive, right, of different type of populations. If you don't have the diversity in race, let's look at the diversity of age. Let's look at the diversity of gender, right? Ensuring that, money, exactly. Let's look at all of those things because that begins to determine you are reaching out to all of the different populations that live in your community. You're welcome. You're welcome, Megan.
Thank you, Dion.
No problem.
I think we can move to the final section. I believe you have it divvied up into three.
I do. Well, yep. And these two are kind of gonna go with each other. So I won't stop in the middle. So this is professional staff management, right? Again, you know, as you are a Main Street manager, you need to have the skills that you need. You need to support, right? So you need to be able to participate in advanced trainings like this, but other trainings in economic development. That should be something that is really highlighted. Again, I'm highlighting our Chicago work because this was a group that, you know, I've been able to work really closely with. Volunteerism was very, very important here. So we partnered with Chicago Cares. Chicago Cares has a volunteer power of service training program that we were able to implement to all of our Chicago practitioners. As a part of that, we were also able to develop a relationship with Allstate. Allstate actually was the underwriter of the power of service trainings, right? So we were able to not only train the local Chicago corridors with this volunteerism training, but we were also able to connect them with Allstate that could provide some level of direct technical assistance as well as financial support. And I'll show you that to their local community. Many of our community members often are staffs of one, like you, just one staff member, limited support, or they don't, or they're being charged with doing real estate development and they don't have those skills. So we're in the process of now trying to develop a relationship with the Chicago Federation of Labor, Workforce and Community Initiative to actually start sourcing employees for these local community groups. And what's so really cool about this is that this is a federal program. So a lot of states may have this, but here are, you know, it's through the Department of Labor. But what we're doing here in Chicago is that for 6 months, 90% of these individuals' individual pay will be covered through this program. So this is through a state and federal program. 90% of their salary will be covered through this program. The community just needs to commit to hiring this person full time, right? So if they need administrative support, or if they really want to start engaging with seniors, this group can help them begin to identify seniors that are retired, that want to get back into the workforce, and they can test them out for 6 months by getting 90% of their salary paid. They just have to pay 10%. We also developed a relationship with the Incremental Development Alliance. I talked a little bit, I briefly mentioned that for Charlotte. And, you know, real estate development was something that the city of Charlotte wanted to do in a small scale development. So we did a small scale, a boot camp, a small scale developer seminar boot camp with the city of Charlotte. In Chicago, what we're really trying to do is have the Incremental Development Alliance look at our zoning requirements and understand what are the impediments to small scale development. Many of our commercial districts are not trained zoning professionals, right? And you don't have to be, but you do need to understand the principles of zoning. What are some of the impediments that are stopping either your local, your local business owners that would love to, if they own their property, that would love to restore and rehabilitate their property? What are some of the impediments that are stopping that? So we're working with IncDev. So again, that is that professional development tool, really pushing, either helping support them with staff, as well as helping them support their professional development. I do want to just highlight some of the numbers here, right? Again, I won't go into deep detail about my Chicago contract because it is a pretty hefty contract and this allows us to be able to do a lot of this work. But we were able to commit at least $10,000 of professional development. That meant registration at the Main Street Now conference. If several of you are going to the conference, come meet some of these Chicago practitioners. We were also able to get them to the Illinois Main Street Conference. This Chicago Cares contract, it was a 6-month contract to deliver the Chicago Cares power of service and volunteer management. Several of the communities were also able and were awarded Excellence in Revitalization Awards from the Lieutenant Governor's Office here in Chicago. I mean, from the Illinois Lieutenant Governor's Office, and these are the two communities, I apologize, in Chicago that were awarded the Calumet Area Industrial Commission, as well as Austin African American Business Network. Allstate, again, $130,000 were invested back into each one of the, not into each one, into the community's total. So from the power of service, $10,000 were provided to 6 of the Chicago main streets, and $4,000 honorariums and additional services were provided. So again, the numbers are important, but this is our way really building the capacity and showing the value of Main Street in connection to to partners and different type of partners. The last point that I'm going to highlight is effective operational structure. So this is, I just thought this was a really cool diagram to demonstrate when we're thinking about, excuse me, effective organization. These are just some of the qualities that they have: leadership, decision-making and structure, the right people, work processes and systems, and number 5, a really good culture. You guys can read over this a little bit later. But I want to highlight yet again, this is a community. So I am very fond of the person on the left, this person where my arrow is highlighting. I've known this man for over 25 years. I've known him from my time at the city of Chicago, my time at LISC. I was his program officer at LISC. And now we're working together as a part of the Chicago Main Street program. Excuse me, this is the Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation. So when I met them 25 years ago, they were just starting up. Carlos Nelson here was a trained engineer, was not trained in organizational management or being an executive director for a nonprofit. He was just starting. He was just starting his work. So he was really committed. So he started first. It was like a staff of 1 or 2. He brought in Miss Cheryl Johnson here, who's really skilled in economic development and really help manage their special service area program. They have 3 special service areas that they manage. That is also known as BIDS or NIDS, wherever you are across the country. Miss Linda here, Linda, oh my God, I'm forgetting her last name. Anyhow, Linda manages a lot of their city programs that supports their seniors. This gentleman here really works a lot on their engagement. And Miss Norma Sanders, she was actually my connection and contact when we were starting a technology program. So she's really skilled in technology. So these individuals really have a diverse staff. This is just their leadership team. So this is not their entire team. They have about 25 people on their team. In each one of those, individuals report either up to Carlos, Cheryl, etc. But they have a diverse staff that diverse in, I would say, their experience that is comprised in community development practitioners with backgrounds in housing, real estate, workforce development, community organizing, and office management. This lovely picture that you're seeing here, the Auburn Gresham Healthy Lifestyle Hub. This was an old dilapidated building that had been dilapidated in this community for over 20 years. It used to be an old department store. Well, because of their experience in real estate, they were able to purchase this building as well as rehab this building. And so now they have a asset and a parcel that they own in the corridor. And they were able to get the University of Illinois to move in like a medical center, because there wasn't a medical center there. And they have several different offices that are in this building. It's a huge building. It's actually a really big building, but it was an eyesore. So they were able to bring this building back. And why it's so important to me is that as I was a program officer at LISC, I provided some of the first tiny dollars that went in to support doing a feasibility study. What I also think is really important about this organization is that they have a really great motto. Culture should have been in the middle, because when you go there, they're such an encouraging group. They work together. They try to figure out problems, but they have high operating resources. So I have a very high budget. They have high financial resiliency. And when I talk about that, that means that they have several different diverse sources of funding. You guys are going to talk about that, I think, in the next session, but they have multiple sources of funding where there is not one source of funding that is dominant. They really have a really good diversification of how their funding comes in from corporations, from foundations, from city government. They're not solely reliant on one funding source, and they have high programmatic capacity. So they have the ability to deliver when new programs are presented for them, because they have the staff, they have the expertise, and they have the credibility on delivering. But again, it took them about 25 years to get here and grow. Carlos started with a staff of 1 with the building he was renting. And now they have grown and evolved to this very, I would say, sophisticated local organization that many organizations in Chicago go to see them as a mentor or ask them to mentor them. So we're going to take some questions here because I know we're about to run out of time. I didn't think that I would talk so long, so sorry, but I'll shut up here and take a few questions if you guys have some.
Thank you, Dion, and everyone, feel free to use the hand raise, use the chat. We've got about 10 more minutes left. Dion, can you go back to the previous 2 slides back now? I'm just looking at the key focus areas. So around professional staff management and effective operational structure. So for either one of those, are there a few more specifics about exactly what professional staff management looks? Of course, we heard a really great example of investing in and making time for professional development. Are there any best practices around the staff management that you could highlight? And I think that would also be the same with effective operational structure.
I would say effective staff management would definitely be like a clear delineation of roles and responsibilities. If you have, other staff members, besides just an executive director, or if that executive director is working with the board, if it's only just a staff of 1 and you're working with your board members and you really need them to show up, they should be responsible for governance, right? So starting to think about that, they're responsible for governance. They're responsible for helping you fundraise because you're not the only person that should be fundraising when we're thinking about professional staff management. They're also ensuring that they're giving you your yearly annual review, right? Just as an example, they're giving those annual reviews so they can tell you, okay, you're doing this really well, but I want you to work on this, right? So you have 1 clear delineation of roles between board and staff. You also have a clear delineation of roles if you're the executive director and you have a program manager that's leading some work. This is what I'm responsible for. This is what you're responsible for. If you have a chart that shows that, that would be great. You can find those charts online sometimes, just like a staffing chart. Also, if your board of directors really, just don't have an evaluation form, they can find that online, for a nonprofit of your size. So you can go to, you can Google small nonprofits. There are several organizations that, it's one that's not coming to mind. I'll have to find this and bring it back in and share it with you, Kyle, that it's an organization that I've gone to often for a board actually that I'm on. So I'll give you an example of Equiticity. Equiticity is an organization here in Chicago. It's all about transportation equity, right? The organization was essentially created by this phenomenal gentleman that, was an Obama fellow. He's just really well versed in transportation, and he recruited us to his board. But the organization began to grow, and the organization also began to start experiencing some HR related issues, right? So the board had to quickly step in to, 1, develop a board handbook, right? HR policies that we did not have in place already. So this example is so like easy for me to point to because it's been something that we've been working on as a board for the past year. We have started to grow. We started with a budget of maybe $200,000, right? Or maybe 100, so maybe less than that. Our budget has quadrupled over the past year that we're now at like a $2.5 million budget. So we had corporations and foundations that are coming to us, but we just didn't have certain policies in place. We didn't have an HR. How would we hire people? Because we were hiring people at a very quick moment, very quickly. And something actually happened that our executive director was called out for inappropriate hiring practices. He wasn't bringing the board members or bringing other people onto the hiring, and something just went wrong. I won't give you a lot of details about it, but you can just imagine. something went really wrong where we had to hire an attorney. We had to address some of these inappropriate, maybe power dynamics that were going on. We also had to ensure that our executive director was taking accountability for some of the inappropriate power dynamics that showed up. So, really ensuring that your organization has the policies in place that it needs to withstand or just be prepared, or be hardened enough to be prepared to identify. Yeah, I have clear HR policies. We have policies now for our staff and personnel. So these are things that we had to do. So it was like essentially trial by fire that the board was learning, right? So that's one example. And then for the effective operational structure, I think it is, I think I know I talked through this, but I do believe that this slide here is really important.
I see
When
that.
you're thinking about, when you're thinking about effective operational structure, is that you want to look at, do you have the financial resiliency that you need to remain a sustainable program? Your resources don't have to be high. They don't have to be high. This organization just happened to have high operating resources, but they didn't start that way. But they were when they started, they were on the path to really diversify their funding so they could be sustainable, and we could be talking about them 25 years later. And then as they were bringing on new programs, they ensured that they had the staffing that they needed to actually follow through on these programs. And so that also takes a little thoughtfulness where you could be working with a foundation. And again, I talk a lot from the foundation world because those are the groups of individuals that I'm used to working with and bringing in money to support programs that I lead. Foundations are great about giving you money to support a program, but they don't give you money to support staff, operating support, right? Your administrative costs to manage that program. So you have to, as I have been working with Carlos and his team for the past 25 years in different roles, a lot of my feedback to him often was, yeah, Carlos, yeah, we may have this money from the federal government, but you don't have procurement policies in place. You didn't consider asking for admin dollars. You didn't consider how many staff members you would actually need to lead 5 programs that we're trying to move forward. Now, this is before Main Street. So now, as I go in, he would often say, Dion, we had very tough conversations, and I didn't know if we would be friends. But now this person, I would say, is my brother from another mother. And he can call me, and we really are always very thoughtful about how can we be supportive. So I think, again, I'm talking through this a lot, but I think there are a lot of examples that you can find online. And Kyle, when I remember the organization that I think was so helpful to us at Equiticity, as well as information that I shared with Auburn Gresham, I'll send that to you so you can share it out to the group.
This is great. Thank you so much, Dion. I just put a link in to the chat to the self-assessment. And this self-assessment, well, it's for the last part, for effective operational structure, it's a checklist. It just helps you to really understand what are those foundational documents that will allow us to perform and have impacts within the organization, that perform appropriately and effectively. And that's same, it goes with the staff management. You're talking about a checklist here about doing reviews, of having a job description, appropriate roles and responsibilities. You want to have these documents in place. It's, like I said, it's foundational. It's not the funnest part. I know we all in Main Street, I think there's a very sort of general drive. Let's get some energy in downtown with some people. Well, we can't forget that you have to have that organizational structure. You got to have that strength in order to actually make things happen. So you got to do all that, the organizational checklist of outreach to people, of communications to a broad audience, of having the structure in place for your nonprofit organization. that is so important to actually get things done so that you can do the cool design project, so that you can have an effective event downtown. So just remember that. This is not what I think that we typically gravitate towards as volunteers in a community for a Main Street organization, but it's the most important in order to make the impacts that you want for your community. So Dion, you hit it out of the park. I really appreciate your time today and all the time that you put into crafting this. And I look forward to working with you again soon. I'm going to stop sharing. I got a big thank you here. Let's see. You stop sharing. It's now my turn. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Everybody hold tight. It's going to look really nice once I get it there. I promise. Okay. And then I'm going to share this. And I'm going to share that. So thank you so much, Dion. And we'll see you out and about. I hope to talk to you soon and we can collaborate on the next project.
That's right.
Fabulous. Yeah.
That's right. Thank you, Kyle. And I hope to see some of you guys in Boston. If you are coming to the Boston conference, find me and say hi. I'd love to meet you in person if I don't already know you. Talk later. I do got to go take care of that little person. Thank you, Kyle.
Little person. That's great. Well, everybody,
have a good day, guys.
You got it. You too. So just want to point out that we've got, you'll get the slide deck. It will be posted. Here are contacts for all of our Virginia Main Street staff, as well as our extended family and economic development community vitality. We've got a lot of resources to help your community advance and in the way that you want. So please reach out and stay in contact with us. So at this point, all of our mobilizing Main Street communities, please stay on the meeting. And everyone else, I look forward to seeing you out and about across the Commonwealth. So please reach out if you need assistance. So let's just take a little breather while we transition. Thank you so much.
Also, if you're not in mobilizing, could you add what community you represent into the chat before you leave? Just for our records. Thank you.